7:12 a.m. Tuesday, October 28th. This is the Podly Weekly. Welcome back, myself. Welcome back, you. Welcome back, everybody. Podly Weekly is back after a little 1-week hiatus. Last week was a little busy for me. I was coming back from Oklahoma City and San Francisco on Tuesday of last week, so didn't have the time to get an episode out. Did have the time to get a Nut Report out, and hopefully you all have been enjoying that. But sometimes this year in particular, life has found a way to be extremely busy. I've been traveling, I feel like, more times over the weekends than not over the weekends. And this past Sunday, I think was like the third time I was just like home watching. And boy, is it relaxing. I gotta say, the actual experience of sitting on your couch and like clearing your day and watching football for 7 hours it's therapeutic, to be honest. Absolutely therapeutic. Helps when the results are good. But regardless, I just think the actual act of sitting and watching has been something you miss when you're traveling on not doing it all the time. And then you finally get to do it. You're just like, this is heaven. And that's what this past Sunday was. It wasn't heaven for everybody. We've had, I think going into the week, something that I probably would have talked about last week, we have a very intense race on our hands. I think this is the most close, as everyone kind of hyperbolizes all the time. We had 9 3-4 teams last week. That is by far the most 3-4 teams we've ever had. The difference, you can go all the way from like 6th to 12th with those amount of teams. And this week we have some clarity. Still like 5, I think 3-5 teams and 4-4 teams. It's still a mystery as to how this is all going to shake out. And I think as we kind of step through the Nut Report, this is probably the very last week in which the Nut Report is going to be sort of out of sorts in the sense of it's a power ranking. By next week, week 10, it needs to transition itself fully to that playoff race where you can kind of see ahead. I'll do the remaining schedule. I'll start talking about the actual matchups each week. And I'm going to start to hammer that a little bit more as we go through. And a little new segment that I want to do is like the historical head-to-heads. But yeah, this is the last week in which you're going to see a team that's 4-4, maybe sitting below a team that's 3-5 in the Nut Report power rankings here. But as a whole, this was, Bye-Mageddon for many teams across the board. We had 6 teams on bye. Scoring was remarkably high, considering that there was a lot of teams that, were missing key players. If you're going to have 6 teams on bye, you're going to miss a lot of things. But I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams over 100. The average for this week was higher than week 1. And theoretically in week 1, you have everybody. The average was also higher than week 6. And I think in week 6, we only had 2 teams on bye. So the scoring wasn't really affected for the top end teams. Now, we also had the bottom appear to ourselves. The last couple of weeks, we've been seeing teams explore new lows for themselves. Kind of dating back all the way to week 5. Peyton explored a 54-point game, which was definitely shocking. Seeing a sub 70 is still kind of a bad game, but 54 was gross. Week 6, we saw Mike explore 49 points, which is just equally as how much lower can we go? To which Nick was like, how about I just go one lower, 48 points in week 7, which, it's only 1 point lower than Mike, but it's still shocking that some other team can actually nail that. And then lastly, this week, Jaden was like, I got you all better, hold my beer. How about 35 points on the week? 35 points is historically low. It's not the lowest, but it is the lowest we've seen in about 5 years, which is remarkable. The last time we had a team even remotely close to this was, I guess you want to count it, but Dill in 2018, he had 37 points that year. That was relatively close, but the lowest, of course, still goes back to 2017 when Garrett did 28 points as a low score. But yeah, we're in some pretty pretty gross territory down there. We got some teams that have, the lows for the DVFFL have been roughly around the low 30s, and Jaden was starting to flirt with that a little bit with the mid 30s there. But yeah, it's a week of kind of questionable, shrugging your shoulders a little bit. I don't know some of the decisions that were made. I think this kind of stems right into my matchup with Tanner. Like, sometimes fantasy football can be hard. Sometimes fantasy football can be easy. Thankfully, this week I think you saw the dualities of the situation any given week for any team between the matchup of myself and Tanner. Tanner, who had depth for the week, had the painful choice, and we talk about this sometimes, the decision fatigue of having to choose the right players, and you don't want to always have 4 or 5 players that are all kind of the same, because then every week you have to then pick by matchup, pick by vibes, pick by whatever to get the right guy in there. And I don't know what Tanner's thought process was for some of these decisions. I can say sometimes how I break these ties is I try to remove myself as far as possible from my own team and say, what is the player that like the other team doesn't want to see? And the answer to that for me was I did not want to see Chase Brown in that lineup. I thought that Tanner was playing coy with me and that he was going to slide in Chase Brown at some point before Sunday. And then once the games kicked off and he didn't put him in there, a guy who is starting to rise because of Joe Flacco. I mean, just the past week on Pittsburgh, Thursday night, for Thursday Night Football, we saw him explode for 108 yards. I'm like, okay, so Chase Brown is back as far as I'm concerned. That looked really good. He looked positive. The offense looked positive. And not enough for Tanner, though. Not enough for Tanner. So I was very thankful to have 22 points sitting on Tanner's bench. And essentially, Diz found multiple ways in which he didn't choose to win this game. In many ways, he should have beaten me like 2 to 3 times over. Chase Brown sitting on the bench was one of those things. Kayshon Boutte, I can understand you might go for the Dobbs over that or the Adunze. His devotion to Devonta Smith is remarkable, but also with the AJ Brown news, I get it. You got to do what you got to do. But yeah, it really comes down to the Chase Brown of it all was really the scary one. And if honestly he put him in, keeping even Jordan Mason and Judkins, he would have beaten me pretty soundly. But he didn't. And on the other side of this was me. I didn't really have a lot of choices. So sometimes when you have a week like this where injuries and bye weeks have taken over the team, like anyone I pick up is going to the lineup. And, Chimmy is going to be a staple for my team going forward. He is a cheat code. I can't wait to get into the deeper dives of this. But Chimmy represents the research, the R&D department of the Nut Report and the R&D department of Nut has really worked hard on identifying talents like Chimmy. And Chimmy, this is a man. This is a man that we all are going to know his name by the end of this year. I tell you this. I'm very pleased with Chimmy. But yeah, putting him in was fun. And I think from my perspective, this week was very much like, I obviously get to watch my team, which is very exciting. But also I kind of chalked it up of like my whole team's sort of on bye. I just can't wait to see just like you play the deep. This is the most fun for me when it's like the 14 team and you're pulling guys out of a hat essentially and you're putting them in the lineup and you're just hoping it's all going to work out. Like nothing worse than when you pull a guy out of the hat and he's like, hey, and you got no receptions, which is what I did with Jalen Coker, and that guy is off the team the last week. But this week was kind of fun of just like, hey, let's try this guy, and it kind of worked for both. So. Both with DK and Noel, can't be too upset. It did, I guess, a little bit upset on the Noel thing. I had my choice of any pass catcher for the Texans, and I'm like, okay, I'll get this guy, and the other two fucking score a touchdown. So it's kind of the random lottery there. Anyway, I don't need a deep dive in my own matchup. I just want to say, Diz, you screwed the pooch. You kind of, I don't know what happened. You got in your own head on that one. Didn't need to be that hard, but it ended up being that hard. Let's get into the tiers. This is also Halloween week. Cannot wait for Wilson Times costume episode. Dill in the morph suit is just peak entertainment to me. I'll mention it again, but I just absolutely love that episode so very much. Or having Christian also in a mask that is creating like a jungle-like environment for his face is also hilarious that those guys do it. This year they've been really good. Wilson Time's been really good about keeping itself under an hour. But I'm really hoping for the Halloween episode that you guys let it rip, because I feel like that adds to the charm of it. The longer the episode goes on, the more sweaty and uncomfortable you guys get. It's just, again, peak entertainment for me. I feel like I have to like clear my schedule to sit and watch that one, as opposed to kind of watching and listening on the go. I gotta like sit down on the couch and just like take it in. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Tier 1, Week 9, Nut Report. Let's go. Teams are myself, Christian, Dill, Jesse, and Jaden. So new entry into this tier is Jesse. Jesse's been playing phenomenal football lately. But he's the 2, 4, and 4 teams here are Jesse and Jaden. We have 2, 6, and 2 teams with Christian and Dill, and then you have myself at 7 and 1. I statistically, from our DVFL standpoint, have clinched the playoffs with a 7 and 1 record. Hooray! And everyone cheers. But 7 and 1, scoring 117 points a game. At the rate that I'm going right now with that, that is the most points scored so far, if results hold. This is the most points scored since Gare's record-breaking year in 2018 when he scored 114 points a game. He also had 10 games over 100. I have had 8 games over 100. Every single game this year has been over 100 points. So on task to kind of get close to that would be the goal, to kind of erase that old record of Gare's there. Christian and Dill are keeping pace, averaging 106 and 101 respectively. They have win streaks behind them since Christian beat me. He's been on a 5-game winning streak. So he's right. Both the Wilsons are right on my tail for the year. Looking very positive, and feel like I can safely report that they're also probably going to clinch the playoffs. If they win this week, they guarantee it. They would be 100% chance of doing it. A loss this week would still make it a 91% chance. But again, any win that they get from this point forward is going to be 100% chance of making the playoffs, unless they start losing a couple games. Then obviously that starts to slide back. But I feel like you're starting to see the formation of the first 3 teams for the playoffs. And on this note, I think with how the rest of the season is playing out, with like this huge disparity. I mean, we're talking about Dill is in the 3rd seed, and he has a 4-game advantage over Jesse. We only have 6 games left until the end of the year, roughly speaking. I guess 5 games left. No, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 6 games left. Wow. Nothing like me counting out loud with you guys not even seeing me, but I had my fingers up and the whole thing. But anyway, 6 games left for the rest of the regular season, and Dill has a 4-game advantage over Jesse, with the records. Chances are we're looking at this is the flex committee, this is the flex seating right here. It's like myself, Christian, and Dill. In some order or another, these are the 3. We're looking for the 4th, and the 4th is going to, I think, at best, this season, for how the season's playing out, the best representation of the 4th team is going to be someone who is just in the muck with everybody else, and they've just surfaced themselves up, and then they're not going to get a choice. They're going to play one of the other guys in the muck. I say all this, I think it's going to be a very interesting flex seating ceremony, because everyone is going to be kind of a mess all the way up until the very end. I mean, these teams, I don't see any separation here. There isn't a sign of life. Jesse's probably the best team so far, but again, these things fall and rise and fall and rise. Like Jesse's team currently is on a tear right now, and we'll get more about that later. So he has the highest chance to kind of pull himself out, but still, he's 4 full games behind, 2 games behind, I suppose. Dill, it's too much, I think, to overcome at this point, unless there's a complete collapse up top and a complete surge down below. So Jesse and Jaden kind of wrap it up here, but honestly, I think if I had to adjust these tiers, I think the tiers are very much like myself, Christian, and Dill are on one level, or as Christian likes to say, we're a loaded baked potato at this point, and then Jesse kind of is hanging on there for what he's been able to do. Jaden had a horrible week. The wheels are starting to fall off a little bit for Jaden, and he's kind of clinging to this 5 seed. I really wanted to move him out of this. but just couldn't find the case to do so. I'm sure this will just fully enrage Cal, who is 3-5 and scoring 110 points a game. And obviously he kicks off the next tier. But like Cal cannot seem to beat teams that he should have business beating. And, he played Mike, he's played Jaden, and he's failed at both of those assignments. If he's supposed to be better than these teams, he should be better than these teams. He played Diz. He failed that assignment as well. So I'm not seeing the hope there for Cal. So transitioning into Tier 2, we have Cal, Alec, Tanner, Peyton, and Brandon. This is an interesting tier, and of course, this is the tier that everyone's all split up on because we have Cal at 3-5, Alec at 4-4, Tanner at 3-5, Peyton at 3-5, and Brandon at 4-4 at the 10 seed. Let me explain. So Cal is sitting here at the 6 seed, 3-5. If he gets one more loss, it's going to be really hard for me to justify his existence at this level because of the points. He's only being bolstered here because he's scoring 110 points a game. He's also put up 125 and 112 the last 2 weeks and lost. If you give that number to any of the teams in this tier, nor teams above or below, guaranteed those are W's for a lot of these teams. But Cal continues to run into the hardest assignment of the week, which, is how fantasy football works, baby. But yeah, Cal has gotten really unfortunate on the amount of points scored, but yet not the most points scored against on the year. That honor goes to Jaden, who has one more point more on the year than Cal. So Cal can't even get that and can't even safely say that as a declarative sentence of like, well, I got the most points scored against me, so I can't really do anything about that. You don't. You have the second most points scored against you. So we got to find a new angle there. Alec is sitting at the 7th seed. He was looking great 2 weeks ago. 76 points last week was not good. 82 points this week is really not great either. Got the win, but not a lot of signs of hope there. So it's like, oh, that's not great. And then, Diz was doing great 3 games in a row there as a win. He loses this week. Should have put up more, but, can't fully justify him being above Alec, who's 4-4. Nor can I put him above Cal, who's outscoring him almost by 17 points. And then, it starts to just kind of devolve from there. Peyton's sitting at the 9 seed. He's 3-5. Again, like we've gotten one win over the past 4 games. We have gotten over 97 points one time over that span. Not looking super great, not looking super bad, but can't really fault Peyton. He's gotten 105, 124 points scored against him. Same kind of deal for Cal, who had 137, 133 points scored against him. So, sometimes that happens, but again, on Peyton's scale, he's 3-5. Can't really justify him jumping Tanner because he's not as hot as Tanner is right now. But you can't jump really Alec. Alec's won more games, that sort of thing. And then lastly, we have Brandon at 4-4, the 10 seed. The reason why he's here is that the last weeks before this week weren't looking super grand. I mean, if we go all the way back, he scored 105 points in week 2. Since then, it was 89 points, 75 points, 84 points, 84 points, 83 points. So all I got the indication from that is like, okay, this guy scores 84 points a game, which is 10 points less than the league average. I don't know what he's got, and then suddenly he explodes for 112 points. Consider that 112 points there kind of like okay. But I'm not willing to move him up the rankings just because he scored over 100 points for the second time this year. I think it's still, the jury might be still out on Brandon on what the team is, but the arrow is starting to point up. And again, if this is the last week of this power ranking thing, he's going to probably jump right back into the tier 2, higher tier 2 territory, with his 90 points per game. And then we have tier 3. Some hope still down here. Again, mixed bag of records. We have Mike at 4-4, Cody at 3-5, Nick at 3-5, and Mitch at 2-6. Mike is starting to come to life a little bit. 3 wins over the last 4 games. The wins are completely ugly, and again, can't justify fully moving Mike up when he's getting an 80-point win and an 83-point win, but then he explodes for 133 points. Again, not going to just move the needle because of that, because only 2 weeks ago, we saw Mike put up 49 points. So it's the yin and yang of all of this, but Mike is a confusing 4-4 team. Technically speaking, though, he is a tier 1 team, considering he did beat Cal, and Cal, as we know, is the number 1 team in the league right now. So in some pseudo territory, Mike is actually sitting right up there at tier 1 right next to Cal, and the rest of us kind of fall kind of after that. But congrats, Mike. You're kind of you're kind of multi-dimensional at this point. You're tier 1 and tier 3. Then we have Cody and Nick, 3 and 5. Cody needs a 100-point game in the worst way. He's averaging 13, the 13th amount of points right now. He's 80 points a game. Cody, I don't know. It's like the high watermark for the season is 92 points in week 4. Cody, I think, remains as one of the only few teams that has not scored over 100 points yet on the season. He is the only team who has not scored over 100 points yet on the season. So his high watermark was 92 points. Since then, it's in 78 in week 5, 86, 73, and 84. Just kind of there. That's the best way to describe it. Almost got some couple of W's there, but kind of just there. And then Nick, I mean, it could be lower, to be honest. I really tried to think and make the case to make it go below Mitch, but then Mitch put up another stinker of 65 points this week. So it's really hard to move Nick down, but it's bad. Like 71 points again is that's a good week from Nick at this point, considering that the weeks prior were 48 and 53, 72. It truly appears to the rest of us that Trey Benson was the absolute key to this engine of this team, because since he's been out on IR, Nick's team just has exploded in the worst way. He's on a 5-game losing streak right now, and it's not looking good. So for all these teams, we talk about like the 3 and 5 teams, they have a 28% chance of making the playoffs. I think at this point, the 28% chance is going to get bolstered a little bit. I think there's some teams that are going to make the playoffs off of a 3 and 5 record. The 4 and 4 teams have a 61% chance of making the playoffs. There are 4 and 4 teams. So, you can kind of start to do the math a little bit of what remains. But, the 4 and 4 teams take you all the way to the 8th seed. And then Cal's kicking off the 3 and 5 teams at the 9th seed by, standings record-wise. Again, this is, going to be a tight race. I think it's going to come down to points. The biggest thing that we've been talking about this year has been points. So the teams that are actually scoring a healthy amount of points can break all tiebreakers, and I think tiebreakers are going to be the biggest thing this year if the pack stays the same. Weekly points, I already mentioned the week that was. Position leaders, we are 1 week away from the trade deadline. That's in week 10. That means all trades need to be done before Thursday. I'm pounding my leg because if you don't know what you need to trade for, this is literally a dashboard to tell you what you're bad at. So I don't need to read them off to you. If your team is at the very bottom of this list, you should probably make a trade for that position. Just a very simple thing to do. And yet I see teams continually making trades in positions of power. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Dill, why would you trade for a wide receiver when you're 6th on the year in wide receiver? I don't understand. But all right, that's the nut report this week. Historical stats, mentioned this previously. Peyton has joined the 100 Loss Club, joining Brandon and Cody. So congratulations, Peyton, you are there. But you're also 5 wins away from joining the 100 Wins Club, which you'd be the first team to have both 100 and 100. So thrilling stuff for Peyton there. I also want to remind everybody of the overall record percentage, because I think there's some surprising teams in the top. This is all-time regular season records. Like you have myself, winning percentage. These are all active teams. Myself at 595. Then you have Alec, who has the second highest winning percentage of active teams at 560. Then you have Mike, third highest at 555, which I think is the surprise. I don't think people think that Mike is up there, but Mike is up there. Christian there is the 4th most highest winning percentage, I should say, at 551. And then Cal is the 5th most at 549. Sometimes I think it gets all put out there into the world of like certain teams are going to be a certain height. And I obviously know that Alec and Mike have played less seasons than, let's say Cal and Dill. But still, I thought it was pretty remarkable to see some unexpected teams kind of at the upper end of the winning percentage there. But yeah, anyway, tidbits for me. Maybe not such a tidbit for you. But otherwise, let's move on to the segment. So in the vein of this being a spooky week, I have 9 scary takes for everybody to kind of embrace. Now, these takes themselves are not going to just be solely. They're not going to be. Not everyone's going to get covered by these takes. Let me just put it that way. The point of that being is, I can't have a scary take for every team. I tried, and some teams just don't have anything really spooky going on other than just their record and the players on their team. So I want to make sure this was super unique. So 9 scary takes for week 9. It is Halloween week, and there's so many scary things happening in the DVFFL that I really wanted to put more of a flashlight, like, Luigi's Mansion style, on some of the more quiet headlines that are actually kind of spooky if you kind of think about it for each of these teams. So if you want to think about these takes are meant to be a little spicy, a little unexpected. And if you start to dive into it, maybe you see it the way I see it, you'll kind of come around to like, oh, that is a scary take. This is not. I don't mean this to be like. Some of these are going to be like opinion based. Of course, this is my opinion. But if you dive into the numbers on some of these things, you're like, oh, that is a scary take. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Jesse is one of the hottest teams in the DVFFL right now. Over his last 4, he's averaging 109 points per game, which is the second most points over the last 4 weeks in the league, only trailing myself. Cal, I know, I hear you. You do not have that honor. You do have that honor, Cal. You didn't. Oh, shit. I hate this. I hate that my first opening scary take is ruined by Cal actually having a decent night last night. I wrote this one the night before. Didn't realize that Cal was going to get the Rashi Rice experience. Okay, so let me go back. Jesse, over the last 4, he's averaging 109 points per game. The third most points over the past 4 weeks in the league, trailing myself and Cal. Cal is averaging 115 points over the last 3 weeks. And I'm averaging 115.26 points over the last 3 weeks. And Jesse's averaging what I just said, 109. What is scary about all this? Obviously, everyone goes on hot streaks. Jesse's on a bit of a heater right now. He's doing this relying on the 2 oldest quarterbacks in the league. The moment he dropped Kyler Murray, he went full Stacktivate, but like old Stacktivate with Joe Flacco. He's got Aaron Rodgers. And in a weird way, if it's going to work with the 2 oldest QBs, the guys that we've cast off, that you could literally drop Joe Flacco, you could literally drop Aaron Rodgers, and there would not be much fanfare to go and get him. The fact that Jesse's doing it with those guys as the quarterback, when we talked about how important the quarterback position is, really, I think, in my mind, is kind of a scarier thought. Because if one of those guys really gets hot, or if there's a better quarterback that kind of falls to Jesse at some point, this suddenly becomes a pretty decent team that is going to be kind of hard to contend with. Again, Jesse is sitting at the 11. He has the 11th most QB points, which makes sense. He had Kyler Murray. He has the 9th most RB points, so he's under the playoff line in those 2 categories, but he's the 2nd most wide receiver points. He just traded away Nico Collins, didn't seem to affect him that much. He's the most tight end points with Tucker Kraft just teaching and preaching with Dalton Kincaid as well. 4th most defensive points, and then he has 14th most kicking points, which that's been an adventure for him. But if he starts getting some decent quarterback play, he's gotten through Josh Jacobs' bye, which kind of dampened a little bit of the running back position there. Jesse's team is kind of scary good. If you want to get to some spooky takes. All right. I'll do better than getting some false information. I love how I just set up and if you look into the numbers, and then suddenly I get the numbers wrong. But it gets only better from here. Dylan is ruining his championship chances with trades. So this was an off-season narrative for Wilson Time, that champions have X amount of trades to complete, and if you do that, you're going to compete. And I think that Dill has taken an observation about the amount of trades that champions in the past have taken and made it his roadmap. It's not necessarily a fact, it is common that champions have traded quite a bit to get to the chip. We've belabored this point that the last 2 champions since 2023, myself and Cal, have all had 15 plus trades to their name. Dill did 6 trades in 2022, but that doesn't mean that that's the lowest amount. We've had Corey do 4 trades. Jesse in 2021 only did 1 trade and got to the championship. It's not necessarily that you trade a lot, you're going to win a lot. We've had trades in 2016. Gare had 19 trades, didn't make the playoffs. And I'm not saying that Dill's going to not make the playoffs. I think at this stage where we're at in the season, he is. But I think that he's kind of ruining himself in his own narratives. So, like, on Wilson Time, he talks a lot. But he also talks a lot about preaching the value of the running back, and which is completely correct. Like, the value of the running back for this year in this league has never been higher. And yet he has proceeded to spend $55 draft dollars on Jameson Williams and Drake London. Those are his two big fishes that he has reeled in. $25 for Jameson Williams straight up is still just bonkers to me. And then follows it up with dumping out the end of his bench, including running backs that were looking good with Woody Marks, and $30 for Drake London, who didn't play this week at all. I don't understand where, if you're going to spend that much money and you're going to preach on the podcast, on the show of Wilson Time, how important the running back is, and yet go out and not get a running back with $55, the most money, definitely the most money spent on some things outside of Cal, then I don't know what you're doing. His best move this year, of course, preaching the I'm all about player-for-player trades, is a player-for-player trade where he sent away Adunze, a wide receiver who has outperformed both Jameson Williams and Drake London on the year, for, a running back in Genty. So with obviously Jordan Mason there, and convincing Diz that Mason was something more than an injury fill-in is a remarkable, accomplishment. But you'd think if all those other moves would have happened, if I saw him spend $30 to get Genty and send Jordan Mason back, they're like, okay, I get what you're doing, but you're also paying up the bill on like what is a bye week fill-in, an injury fill-in there to get a running back, and keeping Adunze. And Adunze is he's outperforming the guys you've spent $55 on. I don't understand. So Dill, I think, is sort of ruining his championship chances with trades, obsessed with getting a trade done. I cannot wait for this week and next week when it's the trade deadline to see teams, specifically Dill, get themselves in the right position and then trade themselves away and change the trajectory of the arrow, and then wonder why in a few weeks, like, wait, why is my team not performing the way it did post trade deadline? Like, Dill got active in trades around week 6, right? Like, let me go back to his like big boy trades. Dill, Jameson Williams, he sent $25 in week 5. Then he did this player for player situation in week 6, and then he's done his week 8 London trade. So at week 5, Dill was at 115 points in that week. Previous weeks, 105, 137, 116, 88. So Dill was like arrows incredible. And I'm not assuming that these are all related to the trades, but if you want to just start to extrapolate a little bit more, week 6, 73 points, week 7, 91 points, week 8, 86 points. Haven't gone over 100 points since we started blowing up the team for wide receivers. Let's just put it that way. Next team, Cal, is going to be the first team in DVFFL history to make the playoffs with a 6-8 record. Currently sitting at 3-5, that would mean that he'd only need to go 3-3 for the rest of the way. Not a guarantee, but I think Cal, with the amount of points he's scoring, can, at least from a baseline assumption, go 3-3. More broadly speaking, I think in the back of everyone's mind, including the 49ers, is CMC going to make it through the season? Cal is kind of at the mercy of the health of CMC at this point. If CMC goes down, this season is a complete lost cause for Cal. He's lost Scattaboo. He's going to be relying on RJ Harvey at that point. He doesn't have any money to make a trade. He's still very much like, just, again, the trades this year and the amount of money, everyone knows that running backs are like premium. Like, we all know that, right? Like, you need running backs. The teams that are not doing well are the teams that don't have enough running back depth. The teams that are doing well are the teams that have running back depth. I'm seeing teams spend an exorbitant amount of money on getting more wide receivers. And in Cal's case, getting Devontae Adams to cover for Puka's injury and now both on bye, now both coming out of bye. So now he's got both wide receivers on the team. I don't understand. So all this is related to CMC's health is very much paramount for Cal to have any success. If CMC doesn't have, if he's not healthy, Cal's season is pretty much over. And at the same time, Cal is now so fucked in that situation that if he the only way he gets out of this is he needs a lifeline from another team to get him out of this double Rams wide receiver stack. There is no plausible part of my brain that says that Cal is doing this on purpose and that this is a strategy to have both Rams wide receivers and Rashee Rice and Justin Jefferson all on the team, and he is going to equally, at every single week, decide who is the right wide receiver to play. Sounds like a fucking nightmare to me, and it's the most obvious trade that Cal is setting up. I mean, like, if there is not a billboard above Cal's team that says, like, Davante Adams is available for trade, or Justin Jefferson, or whoever, but mostly Davante Adams is available for trade, someone is going to go drop another $20 wad on a wide receiver, and I just want to plead with the league. You don't need to spend money on wide receivers. Spend that money on a running back. Everyone needs a running back. Like, there are teams out there that have multiple running backs that would be willing to sell running backs for a price that's similar to that. But you guys, we can't drop $20, $30 on a wide receiver. It's not going to end up being the way you want it to be. And also, we all have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever and not give Cal a lifeline. All Cal needs is cash. He can't do anything without any cash. Cal's incapable of making a trade without cash being extremely involved, whether that means he's selling off a player or he's buying a player for a bunch of money. The last person in this league that can do player for player is Cal. And if he's going to prove it right, then I would love to see a player for player trade without it. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think Cal needs to have wads of money thrown around for his team to improve. And I think at this point, we've got him a little cornered in a maze right now. All we have to do is just like let him do what he's done to himself, which is get him in this hole. And I say all this. I say all these silly things of like CMC's health is really important on Cal right now. If he's out, then Cal's out. He's backed himself into a wall with this wide receiver choice and no money, and yet he's still going to make the playoffs at a 6-8 record, which will be the first team ever to do so. Alec is, speaking of which, going to miss the playoffs if he doesn't make a trade. Alec is experiencing the quintessential roster problem, the same thing that Diz is experiencing this 1 week. He is experiencing on a larger scale. And here's a team that has extra running backs. His team is loaded with B-plus talents with 2 bona fide A's, in my opinion, of Kyren and Lamb. Now, I'm not going to put a number on the equilibrium of how many B-plus talents to A-plus talents you need on a team to win, but I will say 2 studs is just not enough. Ideally, you'd want 1 more, at least. And I think that's an argument we all can agree on. Kyren and Lamb is nice, would like to have 1 more. Daniel Jones is not going to be bringing it. Tight ends is a fucking crapshoot. Dallas Goedert is getting better, though. I will say some of these B-plus guys are starting to step into A-plus land, but it's also how much do you trust what you're seeing? Sometimes these guys are like, yeah, I know that name, and I've seen these games before, and yes, he is doing really well, but is he going to be doing that all season is the big question for a lot of Alex guys. But this thing really stems down to Rico and Chuba. It's been said on Wilson time. I will say it again. This solution is not going to return value in the way that Alec wants to. He has 3 options on how this is going to play out for Rico and Chuba. Option A, Alec foolishly continues to ride this out as real-life football defeats fantasy football in a deadly split. Like, there's the Panthers, if they're doing well and they're alternating series with Rico and Chuba and they're seeing success the way they want to see success, why would they possibly change? That sounds like a nightmare. So that means Alec has to either start both or decide which one is the right one to start on a given week. Sounds like a headache. Option B, Alec convinces someone to take just one of them while he keeps the other to recoup some value. So that means he's sending away Rico or he's sending away Chuba. He has to, again, the headache starts with deciding which one is the one you want to keep and which is the one that you want to sell, because all of us are witnessing the same thing of like, I view these guys as like, if I need someone to fill in for an injury or I've got a slew of buys that are coming up, Rico and Chuba would be great to cover for that. I recognize the talent is there for a shit ton of points from both of them, and they've both shown that they can do that. I just don't feel secure in relying on any of that thing, and that's the reason why Alex trying to sell this guy. So it's going to be hard to pick one, but if Alec was able to finally pick one of these guys he wants to keep, then convince one other person in this league to buy the other one, that would be option 2. And then scenario 3 or solution 3 to this problem is Alex sells both of them and rids himself of the headache with a desperate team. Now, out of all these options we've talked about, Alec foolishly holding steady, selling one, or selling both, none of these things, none of these solutions at this point, this whole scenario is like nuclear at this point. Like, there's no point. This is just a headache. Alec is basically picking what flavor of headache he wants to have. None of these options are going to return secure value. And if there's anything we want more in this league, is secure value. That's guaranteed week in and week out. And regardless of whatever path Alec chooses, there is not a lot of options. If you had to ask me, option C of selling off both to a desperate team is the best option, because there are teams out there that are desperate enough. But God, Lord willing, to that team that takes on this scenario, because this is truly like nightmare fuel right here. But he has to make a trade. If he doesn't make a trade, and this is the course that his team stays on, and he's in this like headache mode of this, that, and the other, and really not improving the team in big ways, or not using the money he's gained to get somewhere, I really don't think Alec's going to make the playoffs, which is a problem. Jaden is currently not a playoff team. So the scary take here is that Jaden is currently on the slow Nick descent right now. We've seen this before, but after the first 4 weeks of scoring over 100 plus points, Jaden has only one game over 100 over the last 4 games. He's averaging just 81 points per game over the last 4, which is surprisingly the second lowest point total in the DVFFL. Nick is obviously leading the way with that, with the lowest amount of points per game over the last 4. So if he's hitting that atmosphere at this point, with the last 4 games just being worse and worse, and he just set the lowest total score for the DVFL season, what is going on with Jaden's team? I mean, I think the biggest thing starts with Jaden Daniels is not playing. Mariota is not a proper fill-in. He has been fun, and I mean, I guess he's doing not half bad, but Jaden is sort of falling apart. I think the real problem here is, if you, again, looking at the indicators of the scoring leaders, he's only above the playoff line in one category, surprise, surprise, wide receiver, and he is below it in all 5 other categories. There is not points coming from other positions. We're just relying on one position to get him through. And right now, Jaden's season is starting to come apart a little bit. I mean, the first couple of weeks when he was going over 100 was huge, and now points are becoming harder and harder to come by. He went from a team that was averaging over 100 points per game on the season to now only averaging 93 points a game, just from that 35-point stinker. So Jaden's got a lot of work to do, and at the stage that he's at right now and the trajectory he's on, he's not a playoff team. Next, we have Nick is going to threaten the longest losing streak in the DVFFL. So Nick has reached 5 straight losses with this loss this week. He's 5 losses away from Gare's record-setting pace of 10 losses in a row. This team, over the season, is averaging 79 points per game, which is the lowest points per game since Gare did it in 2022 when he lost 10 straight games. We're hitting indicators. Nick is averaging 61 points per game over his last 4 games. 61 points is over the last 4 is wild. Since scoring 105 points in week 3, the closest Nick has been to 100 points was 74 points 5 weeks ago. Brandon is next. Brandon is going to make the playoffs with his schedule. So some positive news, but scary for some. Brandon plays one Tier 1 team the rest of the way. All the teams he plays are all in the mix for the playoffs. He's playing the likes of like a Peyton and an Alec and a Mike and a Mitch. He plays, Jesse's is like one really big Tier 1 team. Jaden is on the cusp there. He also plays him as well. But, I think Brandon has what we all look for in a schedule, control of his destiny in the schedule that he's playing. He can decide what he wants to do from beating the teams. Like he doesn't have to rely on someone above him. winning or someone below him losing, that sort of thing. He can just, if he wins his games, he makes the playoffs. That's essentially what it really comes down to. It doesn't always work that way for everybody, especially with how all the ties are going to work out. But Brandon has that bit of control. Now, let me say this. We've seen this kind of Brandon team before, and I don't want to fall for this is the second time he scored over 100 points this season. But what is different with Brandon is that he's making way more aggressive moves. I love the Pookie trade. Getting off the Breece Hall thing, getting longer-term value with that. He's gotten onto Sutton. He's doing some big moves there. He's also getting Lamar back, which should be a positional advantage, though he is still doing fourth in QB scoring thanks to Darnold. But still getting Lamar on the team is just more of a psychological thing. Kittle is back. So Brandon's starting to look like a full-fledged team right there. And I'm not saying that QB and tight end may not be like the favorite positions to chase. We've talked about like the points and the value fallacy that's with both those positions. But for Brandon, he invested heavily in having those advantages. He drafted heavily to have Kittle as an advantage, and Kittle is an advantage. He drafted heavily to have Lamar as an advantage, and Lamar is an advantage. So far this season, we have yet to see both those advantages in play. And this week, potentially, that's about to change. Two more. Mitch is going to threaten the Sacco again this year. Mitch's team is deceptively bad. It on paper, and I know that Wilson Time, and I'm sure they regret it after Mitch just put up like about 60 points this week, kind of talked at length, almost like a feature film a little bit on how they think that Mitch's team is talking some sense. A team that is now, 2-6, averaging 81 points per game, is talking sense. That made me laugh. Mitch's team has had Hogs healthy pretty much all year. He's had some off and ons, but he's experienced a mild amount of injury luck, I would say, compared to other teams that are missing core, whole departments. Gibbs is on the team, and I think as long as Gibbs is healthy, Mitch has a chance. That's always my assumption. I mean, Gibbs is one of those superstar kind of players. He kind of counts as 2 A+ players, if you ask me. And yet, through it all, Gibbs hasn't been enough for Mitch to do anything. Mitch has the worst record going to the DVFL. We've talked about the fact that going back to last year, Mitch has got 5 wins total over the last 2 years. But he's got over at this point, he's at 15 losses. That's not great. He has a 5% chance of making the playoffs at this point in the season. If Mitch loses one more game, it is over for Mitch in terms of making the playoffs. If you're 2-7, I guess you still have a 8% chance of making it. But I think with the stage that we're at now, it's not looking good. And yes, I know that means it's going to be a tight playoff race, and he's only technically a game behind the pack. But the points aren't coming. Again, like I said, he's averaging 81 points per game. That's not going to break a tiebreaker. It's only going to break a tiebreaker with Cody and Nick. That's it. Everyone else is going to pass you by. This is just something that Mitch has just kind of become very, unfortunately, good at, is not being at the top of the list here anymore. And we already know that the wheels are starting to fall off because he's starting to sell off for the team for parts. Like the Drake London trade, getting back just a bunch of bench filler. Unless the belief is that Woody Marks is going to do well, and I think that out of all the players that were involved in that trade, Wandale is waiver fodder. I cannot believe that we have found a team that buy Wandale is just insane to me. Props to you, Dill, for finally getting someone to bite. Mooney as a replacement for I guess Drake London is a consolation prize. But then Woody Marks, I guess, is the only other new thing out of there that could help Mitch in the immediate. $30 is nice, but clearly we're seeing Mitch sell off the team. So all of this to say, the reason why I think he's going to threaten the Sacco this year is he still has more pieces to sell. Gibbs is a screaming option to sell. And I think the moment he does that, what is keeping Mitch from being one of the worst teams in the DVFL when he currently already is, and that was before he sold. And now he's going to start selling, and it's going to only get worse from here. It's not like he's going to be getting better value for the players that he already has. It's only going to get worse from here. And then lastly, Tanner is going to finish the season below $200 draft dollars, namely because of the Genty trade. Now, I want to talk about this Genty trade for just a brief second. For a guy who I thought when the draft ended, there's always heartwarming moments for the draft. There's players that, if Cody got Gibbs, you'd be like, well, That sucks that Cody had to spend like, $75 on Gibbs, but, Gibbs and Cody, that makes sense. Like, they just love playing together. I thought one of the most heartwarming moments was like when Tanner was able to get Genty for a pretty reasonable price for the price that he could have gone for on his favorite team. And you're like, well, sometimes that doesn't always happen. Like, you get your favorite player, a new great player on your favorite team, and you get to watch them all year, and you get to watch your team all year. And then, out of nowhere, he trades Genty for nothing, essentially. I mean, Jordan Mason is nothing, and Rome Odunze is something. So you basically traded Genty for a wide receiver. The last thing Tanner needed to do was to get another wide receiver. He only has 5 of them. They all do the same thing. The idea would have been to flip multiple of those guys and get a running back instead of trading away the only good running back you had on a consistent basis for another wide receiver as the main hog prize. I'm confused by this trade. I still am confused by this trade because it doesn't make any long-term value add for Tanner. He takes away an edge that I thought was actually a really cool edge. That was the kind of the thing that was getting me excited about his winning streak. Judkins and Genty as a 1-2 tandem. Chase Brown coming on. He has running back depth that could either take him all the way to the playoffs, or if he didn't make it because of the depth, the hole that he was in, he could easily sell off Chase Brown because he has his keeper in Judkins, and you can get some money back. And like it just like felt like a long-term solution. I was like, oh, that's so like Tanner's going to get this thing out of it. Genty was starting to get a little bit more play. The Raiders fucking suck, as they always do. But I thought like maybe there would be something going there. And instead, out of nowhere, he trades away the best player on his favorite team. And without a doubt, I know that the Raiders, like there's some players and some teams, like, Cal will trade away a Cowboy. And I don't question Cal's Cowboy fandom. But, Cal is a fantasy football player first, Cowboy fan second. So then it makes sense, like, oh, he's going to trade away those guys. He just wants to win regardless. For Diz, I thought for sure Raiders came first, then fantasy came second. So I didn't ever even think of a world in which Genty would get traded. And here Genty goes for Jordan fucking Mason and Rome Odunze, and no money involved at all. Absolute fleecing taking place there. And you realize that I just don't know what's real anymore at this point. Like, I thought that Raiders were the Raiders. So I say all this because the scary take here is that Tanner's going to have to make up for lost value in this Genty trade, and he's going to blow his extra money to get something back. Maybe he's in the Lifeline camp of spending stupid amounts of money to get Devontae Adams. Like, I don't know. I hope that Diz, you don't do that. But, you can get out of that. You can buy another wide receiver if you're so keen on buying those. I feel like that's something that's happening between you and Dill, just buying wide receivers. Or you can go out and try to work something out with Alec and get the Panthers situation or something else. But I think that Diz is eventually going to spend money on a running back to fix this problem that didn't need to exist for no reason other than they can have a 5-minute segment on Wilson Time and say, well, we did player for player, which is cool. But not like this. Do a player for player where it's like a non-consequential player for player. Like, oh, we swapped handcuffs because you needed my handcuff and I needed your handcuff. That's the kind of player for player. I'm like, okay, cool. You did that for fun. That was great. I feel like if this was like, oh, let's go have some fun. Let me trade away my best, like my favorite player on my favorite team for Jordan Mason and Rome Odunze. If I heard that trade in week 1, my head would explode. If I hear that trade in week 9, my head is still exploding. In fact, it's exploding more because I don't know how people bought in on the Jordan Mason thing. Did we forget that Aaron Jones existed? Yes, Aaron Jones will get hurt again before the end of the season. I'm sure of it. That doesn't necessarily mean that team is going to start teaching with Jordan Mason. I mean, like, we just, oh my God, it's just, you traded away Genty. Like, I don't know what's real anymore. So, Diz, go move your 5 wide receiver 3s that pretend to be wide receiver 2s and get someone or something. Like, don't understand why the Genty thing happened. Like, that is not talked about enough of how like ridiculous that is. I just don't know what that is. So Dill again finds a lifeline to have running back, kind of give him a stimulus package of a running back by selling off his garbage parts. as he did last year to getting Josh Jacobs. So the system continues, and another player for player trade. And I feel like let's put a warning out to the league. If you're trying to do a player for player trade with Dill, which is a shocking statement because he doesn't always do those. In fact, he's only done them like twice in his entire career. Watch out, because it seems like every time he does it, he gets the better end of the deal, and you get the butt end of the deal. But I guess for that brief 5 minutes when you guys can look at each other in the eyes after the trade is done and say, we just did a player for player trade, that'll be the best feeling you'll feel for the rest of that time, because that trade inevitably is not going to work out great for you. So those are the Week 9 scary takes. I'll run through them again. Jesse, hottest team in the DVFFL. Dill, rooting his championship chances with trades. Cal, first team in DVFFL history to make the playoffs with a 6-8 record. Alec is going to miss the playoffs if he doesn't make a trade. Jaden is not a playoff team. Nick is going to threaten the longest losing streak in DVFFL history. Brandon is going to make the playoffs because of his schedule. Mitch is going to threaten the Sacco again this year. And Diz is going to finish the season below $200 draft dollars because he has to make up for a mistake that he shouldn't have made. That is everything for Week 9. As a reminder, next week is the trade deadline. As you can imagine, we have our trading post one more time. We're going to do another trading episode for next week, so that'll spur it all up. But the trades have to be completed before next Thursday, before Thursday Night Football kicks off. The app doesn't lock it until after the week is done, but we will not accept any more trades after Thursday Night Football on Thursday of next week. So if you have any trades, this is the week to get them done, or early parts of next week. That is the big announcement of sorts. I'm sure it's going to be spicy. We've had a lot of trades this year. Things kind of mellowed out this past week. It was really inspiring for me to have the last trading post go out in week 7, and we had 6 trades come off of that week with that. So I'm sure with another episode, we'll get the machine rolling again and get some more trades out there in the world. As for everyone else, have a good rest of your week. I'm glad to get this one out. Have a happy Halloween. Best week of the year by far. And everyone else, stay safe and stay warm.